What's up, guys? Welcome to the Cross Trainer series, where we aim to bridge the gap between real firearms training and airsoft for both civilian and military training. In this video, we're joined by our two guest instructors, Ryan and Mojo, who are both currently active duty law enforcement.
Ryan, happy to be here. Been a cop about 15 years and look forward to the video.
Mojo, been a cop now for about 4 years, prior military, and I'm also very happy to be here.
In this episode of our Cross Trainer series, we're going to be talking about reloads, specifically rifle reloads. Now, being that the M4 AR-15 is one of the most popular platforms, that's what we're going to concentrate on this video, and because AEGs are one of the most popular versions of that in Airsoft, and used as a training tool by and large, we're going to be concentrating on AEGs and their practical uses, but kind of how reloads apply regardless of what platform you're using. With that, we'll hand it off to our instructors.
Yeah, so we'll talk about these AEGs with respect to the reloads, retention of the magazines, and all that good stuff. Just some points for you and how they translate from maybe the live range, where you're using real weapons, to these training simulator type firearms. For us, in the law enforcement world, retention of magazines is that are empty are not of importance. You get an empty magazine, you're gonna lose that thing. So. You have to take into consideration what your limitations are with the training equipment that you're using. So as some of you may know, with gas-operated guns, your gas guns, the magazine can be what the heart of the the heart of the gun is in the magazine. You've got your pressure vessel in there. So slamming those magazines down to the ground, you could cause damage to them. Could even become a hazard in some settings. For your AEG guns, there's a little bit more of a broad spectrum of ways that you can reload the magazine. You do have the option to tear these things out and let them fall to the ground. However, they aren't going to be as robust as I would say a real magazine would be for a live weapon. So something to take into consideration. Retainment of magazines on a training weapon is, in my opinion, is definitely not a deal breaker. You talk about training scars and things like that, where you don't want to be retaining empty magazines, but I could see for the airsoft world where that would be something that could essentially be an option. Yeah. Some of these magazines are upwards of 200 some rounds, and you may not be depleting the entire magazine, so maybe keeping it is definitely a possibility where you're working into your tactical reloads, TAC reloads, where you're retaining that thing for a later time. For me personally, as a lefty, these guns are pretty standard. It's easy to transition from the guns I was using on the range to something like this. I've had the opportunity to use these with some of my team guys, and they were quite effective. Moving into the styles of those reloads, much of what I was doing is the same. I didn't find myself having to change any of the methods that I was using on this compared to another platform. This wasn't ambidextrous like my duty weapon, but nonetheless it performed much the same. Are there particular styles that you like to use over other methods with these guns?
Not necessarily. Honestly, again, we look at it in the retrospective, as we're playing Airsoft, what the goal is, hey, do I have time? Do I need to do a reload with retention? That being said, that means we're gonna take that magazine. It's still probably got some BBs in it. I want to put that away and maybe go into put a fresh mag because I'm going into a new building. I'm taking over a new area of an AO within the playing field. And it's I want to have that fresh source of feed because I'm expecting to get into some stuff, right? So depending on the environment, or am I in the middle of something and it's man, I need to start pumping rounds, or I need to I'm out of BBs, I need to put a new one in, or transition to pistol. That's a whole nother rabbit hole. But there's a couple ways that we can look into this specifically. We have in the shoulder reloads, over the shoulder, and underneath the shoulder reloads. Taking into account that with AEGs, you don't have to hit a bolt release unless you're running a Tokyo Marui. I know some of the Tokyo Marui guns and some other brands, they have
the GBLS.
The GBLS is one of them. Yeah, there's a couple electric guns in which you have to hit the bolt release. So because I mainly and primarily run real guns, I train Airsoft to that extent. And again, it's all about mentality. I train Airsoft as if I was shooting real guns.
So whether or not you need to hit the bolt release,
I usually don't necessarily hit it, but I grip the magazines the same way.
Okay.
So at least to that extent, right? So because we know that it's not going to do anything. When I first started playing Airsoft and doing stuff like that, I would hit the bolt release. And realistically speaking, the way I always look at Airsoft reloads, it's like a reload with retention, but I drop the magazine. Okay. I just don't need to manipulate it because I know there's BBs going to go in there after the chamber or anything.
Do you relate that realism to how you load the magazine as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Without a doubt.
200 round magazine, are you still loading 28 to 30 rounds?
When we play with our private field with some of my friends and we load about 35, 36 BBs. So the 5 or 6 BBs will help push the other 30 in.
Right.
But when we go to these Milsim events and stuff, like American Milsim, I'm loading everything. This is the thing. I need all the BBs. So we'll talk about like an in the shoulder reload. So I'm cheeking the gun, doing my thing, firing with electric guns, not the GBLS and not some other guns. They don't have an electric cutoff feature. So like obviously you're shooting, and all you're gonna hear is a different in sound. Like it'll sound more hollow versus sounding full. The full sound BBs, hollow sound no BBs. Or I literally don't see anything coming out of my barrel anymore. So what I will do is I will drop the mag will come right out. I'll index my next source of feed, and I do a beer can grip on the back of the magazine. So I do this beer can grip right here. So I'm using these bottom 3 fingers. So you use your middle finger and everything down, all the way to the pinky, grab that. So that if you notice when I grab that mag, my thumb is on this little gap. See that little gap right there? So that thumb aligns perfectly with your bolt release.
Okay.
So I'll index the mags in that fashion. So that mag comes out, grab this thing coming in. And it's the same principle if you were looking at any other kind of reload. So I'm not necessarily staring because it's a 90-degree angle and I can't really see the inside there, but I'm using my thumb to align to this bracket right there along the side of the rifle. My thumb align with that, my thumb's already right there, move my thumb to the bolt release, and I'll start playing from there. And I'll start shooting from there if need be. Then we look at that. The same principles apply. If you have a heavy gun with a camera on it, a laser, a light, sometimes doing that is very heavy. So what we can do is also tuck the gun. We'll tuck the gun underneath the armpit, and the principle still applies. So if I'm shooting, shoot. Oh no, I'm out of bullets. I always safe the gun, personally for me. That's one of my things that I like to do with real guns. Sometimes with real guns, not necessarily a big deal. If this thing is shooting and the bolt locks to the rear, there is no way for the gun to fire. Right? But we also, that's another debate on its own. But for airsoft guns, I try to get the best training as humanly possible. So shoot, well, safe the gun, because potentially if you have 1 or 2 BBs in there, it still could fire.
It's a good habit to get into because we're all familiar with the ghost BB, right? The BB that hangs out in the pop-up chamber that you inadvertently will let off at the worst possible time. So it's always a good practice to put the gun in safe, whether you're doing airsoft or real fire.
Absolutely. So shoot, weapon goes on safe. I always attempt to place weapons on safe. I wouldn't say necessarily it's going on safe. Attempt to place a weapon on safe, tuck the weapon under my armpit, release that magazine. If it doesn't come out, that's another thing that happens quite a bit. Mags don't come out. I will always, doing it in this fashion, the mag will come out. What I'll do is I'll do the shaka, right, like this. If this mag does not want to come out, I will literally just take my finger, pull it out, insert the new one, and start playing from there. That's if the mags don't come out. And that's a very common thing with airsoft guns. Sometimes they don't come out. It's all plastic on plastic.
Especially with AEGs, they don't have the weight that a real magazine would have. So you don't have that. Also, real magazines, because they have a spring-loaded follower to push rounds up, that spring actuates the ejection of the magazine from the mag well.
I never really paid attention to that.
AEGs don't have that, so they will not spring themselves free of the mag well. Especially if you're playing outdoors and you're getting a lot of dust and grit up in the mag well, more often than not, you will end up having to strip the magazine yourself. Not to mention, if we're not talking about the AR-15 or the M4 platforms, there are weapons platforms that are not designed to have a drop-free magazine, and you will need to get in the practice of stripping them. So that's a great way to just get in the habit of, I'm ready to strip it if I need to, and if you're running a platform that does need to be stripped, you're already set up to do that.
I've noticed that over time, as you start playing airsoft more, this will break in, the inside of the guns will, honestly, I've never had problems with it. Actually, I take that back. Copperhead, very dusty, very dirty. A lot of dirt there. I didn't strip mags. So like literally, again, if you need to strip the magazine, you speed it in flight. I'm already attempting to hit that bolt release right now. So I'm already attempting to hit it. It's not going anywhere. But this hand's already gonna do something. I'm not gonna let it sit here and just take the mag out when I could just do it like this and work the problem from there. So I'll grab that spare magazine and rip it if I need to. So that's underneath the shoulder or underneath the armpit. We can do that method. So it's efficient. I clear up my line of sight, I can see what I need to see, work the problem from there. And then we have the over the shoulder. Subjective, again, different environmental considerations depending what reload you have to do, if you're sucked into cover, or under or over something. So shoot, weapon goes on safe, over the top. And it's cool because I can see it, it's right here. Insert that magazine, work the problem from there.
So in what practical use case would you be using the over the shoulder? Just to give people a better idea of when they could apply that technique that they may not be familiar with.
So let's see here. Over the shoulder, let's say you're shooting over top, you're pinched between, let's say 2 cars. You're pinched between 2 pieces of cover. Let's say I have you and you here, but I can shoot over you. I can't go underneath the armpit because it's gonna hit the bottom of the car. Okay. So I could essentially come over the top of it and be like this, and like, oh crap, I'm gonna reload like this, and then come back up again. So
it's allowing you to choke back and compress your...
Compress, yeah.
Okay, got it.
So again, right, the same thing can happen from here as it can here. But if you notice here, let's say I have something in front of me, can't do it. Here, I can at least drop silhouette, do that, With the problem right here, you start shooting from there if you need
And
to.
the platform's already up in your sight.
Precisely.
You don't have to raise it back up.
Could you find any other methods?
Yeah, I think another thing to note is not every decision that's made has a tactical background. Some people may just like that. You know,
Sure.
over the shoulder, that might be how they've trained, and they perfected that. And it's important to understand that not everything that everyone does has some tactical principle following it. There's just certain methods that people do because they like them and it works for them. So that's important.
Is there any other things that I probably missed with when it comes to rifle reloads? Anything particular? Is there anything special in account that you have to take as a left-hand shooter?
No, I don't think so. Again, the guns are so on par with what a real firearm would offer you. You're basically just transferring all of those basic fundamentals over to these things. Again, advantages for lefties would be manufacturers that started to do more ambidextrous options. Again, having a magazine release on my strong side
Right.
definitely increases my speed, efficiency, and all the things.
So as a left-handed shooter, do you have to strip the mag, or like what's?
Yes, I do commonly find myself stripping the magazines with the reloads.
Show us.
Let's show you.
Oh yeah.
So, again, much of it will happen with just under the shoulder. I'll come to here. I'll actually strip the magazine, come back, and then we're back up. It's not a whole lot of additional movements. I do like adding in, grabbing the magazine and kind of turn those two parts into one. Not something I have an extensive amount of practice on, but I could
You've done it
probably
before, yeah.
perfect that, with more reps.
So because this is a non-ambi platform, you're utilizing your offhand, which is your right hand, to also depress the magazine. So kind of in opposition or opposite to what you would do as a right-handed shooter, grabbing two mags at once, hitting that mag release with your shooting hand.
Sure.
You're relying on the hand that is doing the reload to do both actions.
Correct.
So it's harder as a left-handed shooter on a non-ambidextrous platform to get both of those done at the same time.
Right.
Yeah. So not as fast, I guess if you had to break it down into milliseconds, but still easily accomplished even with a non-ambidextrous.
He will outshoot right-handed shooters any day of the
Yeah.
week with left-hand manipulations on a right-handed gun. It's a thing that as long as, again, it's all mentality.
Right.
As long as you train to that standard, you're good to go. It's working. This is another perfect method too for the gun guys that are getting into airsoft or whatever the case may be. If you want to practice, get dry fire reps, this is a great way to do it. You're putting a boxy thing into a boxy thing. Like if you could sit here in your garage all day, not have to worry about a live fire weapon, you can go to the garage, put some BBs in this thing, press. What you need to do, safety goes on, insert the magazine, start working the problem from there. Oh, baby. You get a lot of good training. A lot of the times, like I dry fire with airsoft guns because of that reason alone, because it's so close to the real thing. Can't beat it.
So it seems like most of the reloads we've covered thus far are ditching the magazine.
Yep.
A lot, again, if you're doing attack reload or even in airsoft, if you don't want to drop that magazine, you want to put it back into retention. Can we go over a little bit of techniques for keeping a mag retained while doing a reload?
Yeah, so again, for me, it's a two-step process. When I'm keeping the magazines, I'm going to come up, remove that magazine first. I'll stow it in a dump pouch. That's kind of probably another lane to go down is having a proper gear setup, having the ability to perform these functions. You're either going to need to have an extra magazine pouch that stays empty, so you can put something into it, or just a simple dump pouch to pour your gear into. Once that's stowed, I can then recover the next magazine, come up, and we're good to go. Pretty simple, pretty streamlined. Again, as a lefty, needing to do it two parts is somewhat essential because manipulation of your hands and fingers might not be efficient enough to get that done with just one hand. So.
Especially for real steel environment and stuff like that. If you're holding a live weapon system with ammo still inside of it, as a left-handed shooter, you have to take into account that guy has to grab that magazine. Yeah. He has to try to release the thumb with the same hand that's holding the mag while trying to take out the next mag. Better safe than sorry, which is why I agree with the way Ryan does it as a lefty. As a right-handed guy, there's a couple methods. As it's principles of meeting it in place. So let's say I'm shooting, I'm like, done with the engagement, put the weapon on safe. I'm like, all right, I got a lull. So I can grab that index, that source feed. We covered that beer can grip, right? We can make an L shape, do that number, and I grip the bottom of this magazine, release, insert.
And that also leaves your thumb ready to hit the bolt while still retaining that
if
magazine?
need be, but it's a reduced capacity reload, so I don't need to worry about hitting the bolt.
Okay. Oh, right.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we could do that again, right? Meet it in place, do that, no problem at all. Stow that, or I could do whatever I need to do with it. And then some people do one of these numbers where they just kind of put their pointer finger in between the gap here, Media in place. Whatever flavor you want, as long as you have the ability to quickly change the magazines while retaining them and putting them back in a pouch. And like what Ryan said, touched on it perfectly, you need either good gear setup or a pouch that always stays empty.
Right. So between a dump pouch and an empty mag pouch, is one more or less efficient? Is one something that you'd recommend people have on their gear? So if somebody was looking to set up for the first time their gear, they're unfamiliar with what works for them, what's a good place to start? Is the best place to start with an empty mag pouch, or just go straight with a dump?
I would say if you have $30 to spend on a $30 mag pouch, an extra mag pouch, or a $30 dump pouch, the dump pouch is probably going to provide you far more, like a vast array of other options. And again, if we get into the fine motor skills and gross motor skills and all the things, all that aside, it's probably just exponentially easier to jam
Throw it
whatever
in an
is
open top.
into a big fat open bag than like trying to scurry around this. I mean, this square is the same size as this square.
Right.
So,
It's tough, yeah. It's absolutely tough. Actually, touching back to what he said, which was fine and gross motor skills, we all understand, like, hey, under critical stress, like, you can't do certain things. And there's a lot of guys that watch the DVDs, see instructors online talking about, like, hey, gross and fine motor skills, know them and understand that you won't be able to do certain things. Your definition of gross motor skills is to your level of training. If you always train to hit that slide release, you will hit that slide release. If you train it. If you don't train it, that might be a different story.
Right. Rather than assuming, I'll just hit them.
You look at FA-18 Super Hornet pilots, F-35 pilots, you look at Black Hawk pilots, all these dudes, they're carrying and flying this $1 million aircraft, piece of machine, millions and billions of dollars machine with people in the back. That's pretty stressful. Not even in combat. But you have how many buttons that they can press? Because they train. That's why. So that's one thing to take into account. People always say, like, hey, when you do this reload, you need to hit that bolt release with your open hand because gross motor skills. It's like, no, my level of proficiency, that thumb on there is my gross motor skills.
Right.
Because I've trained to it, right? And that's
There's
something super
also
important.
this little thing.
Yeah, you have a trigger. That's pretty small. Are you saying that I should put my whole hand in there and start pulling back like this? Like
Yeah, we'll just remove the trigger guards.
Yeah, exactly.
And just slap it
right?
with your palm.
Or even this thing. That's pretty fine.
Yeah.
No one has a problem with that. Look at all the handguns as well too. That's just one thing to take into account because I know that's probably going to be a thing where it's like, hey, I watched a video talking about gross motor skills versus fine motor skills. You know your own capabilities, train to the standard in which you want to be. Like what he says the best, you set the ceiling. So you are setting the level of acceptability for your training and your abilities to act under a level of stress, if that's there. So also another thing that we like to do, well, obviously a lot of us carry mags on a vest.
Right.
Do you
Thus
have-
far, we've touched
Only on the belt. Do you have a vest
Yeah,
with you?
I do. It's right here.
That's weird. Go put it on. So you have the standard triple magazine carrier in the front. You're doing all your fun stuffs, and you have the magazines. You notice you don't have a lot of space there to do that beer can grip.
Right, and that's partially because AEG magazines tend to be a little bit shorter than real firearm magazines, which might stick out a bit more to get a different grip. But
So funny story. It's funny because both Ryan and I here, we run about the same size magazines. So I run 20s plus 5s. Same size.
cool.
So it's good. Don't worry about that. So one of the things that we look at, obviously gear consideration is a thing, but it still can be accomplished. What I would recommend, so if you need to get that magazine out, let's say I have this in a vest, whatever, you absolutely can just grab the bottom of it. Let's get the mags out. You can absolutely grab the bottom of it and insert. You don't have to hit a bolt release, but even if you did, you can grab the magazine from the top down like such, insert the magazine, and just work your way to the
Right,
bolt
so you're
release.
just rolling your hand
You
up.
absolutely can do that. The other method I've seen, let's say this is my vest pouch. What I'll do, I'll pull up slightly enough to where I will drive my support hand thumb back down to make a little high five. I can make a little L shape right here in the back of the magazine. Grip the mag like such.
So the added step would be pull
Pulling
it up,
it. Yep. Then do that.
rotate grip,
Yep.
and then
Put it
proceed
insert,
as
so
we've
we go.
shown before.
Yeah. I haven't done the testing to actually see what's faster, but on the range, I have beaten people that are reloading from a belt when I reload like this because my hands again, all about hand speed. It's not about how, like, there's a couple portions in all the reloads that we conduct where you can go fast, but you got to slow down at certain parts. I'd say critical portions where you need to slow down right before you insert and then hitting that bolt release.
I think there's
Everything else
something-
can be fast.
Sure. Well, okay. I think there's something to be said too about positive retention of whatever you're manipulating.
Absolutely.
Right? So while this can accomplish whatever you're trying to do quickly,
Pick up.
this is not the most stable way
not.
to grip a magazine. And this is the big push for why the beer can grip is so effective is because it's very stable, right? So adding that extra step so that you can get a more positive grip on the magazine is going to give you a more consistent reload, more control over the magazine during that reload. So I think, definitely worth practicing the most stable way to perform a reload.
We even look at other ideas too. A lot of the times, I will not reload from here. I use that to backfill here.
Right. Okay. So what Mojo's talking about is I'm going to be reloading from my belt line first.
Because it's faster.
This magazine's spent, and I can get that consistent beer can grip.
Yep.
And then when I've got a lull, I'm just policing magazines down.
Exactly.
to here.
And you're bumping them over if need be, or doing whatever you need to do. I don't know. Do you
I
kind of
do
approach the same thing?
Yeah. I run like a primary magazine, location.
That's your reload location.
For pistol and rifle, it comes from the waistline, and then I refill those locations from my light carrier.
Okay. Real quick before we move on from doing vests, do you guys want to talk about mag orientation on both of these?
So I look at these as a real gun, but let's say bullets are facing towards the tip, like bullets are facing front, right? So the BBs are here, therefore that's the front of the magazine. I always do the bullets for rifle, the bullets are facing towards my butt.
Okay.
Yep.
So
when
that's
I-
on your belt line.
On my belt line. And then afterwards, it's on the vest, my bullets are facing to my right side. And if you're a left-handed shooter, pop them over. Would you agree?
That's 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, because if you are doing a beer can grip, you're gripping it the same way you would on your belt line. It's coming up and ready to seat without having to spin it around.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, again, right, the biggest thing is training. Like, get the reps, put the gear on, go to the backyard, do what you need to do, go to the garage, try it out. Figure out what works for you. None of this is the end all be all. None of this is the solution, but this hopefully could help you kind of guide you down the right path to find a solution that works for you.
That just about covers rifle reloads. Hopefully you gained something to implement on your kit and kind of make your training regimen a little bit better. Thanks again to our two instructors for being here and for showing us this. Make sure you stay tuned to the rest of the Cross Trainer series to get even more helpful tips and info to increase your skills.